I never thought walking into Hathaway Federal Bank would change everything. But there I stood, Mrs. Kaplan's insulin money clutched in my hand like a shield. The marble floors gleamed under the chandeliers, reflecting faces that didn't look like mine men in tailored suits, women with designer handbags that cost more than my monthly rent. My sensible loafers squeaked slightly against the polished surface, announcing my presence to anyone bothering to listen. The teller stations stretched across the lobby in a neat row, each one staffed by someone with the same pleasant, practiced smile. I headed for the nearest open window, already reaching for my ID. Tamsin? My sister's voice cut through the quiet murmur of banking business. Aubrey stood framed in her office doorway, her navy blazer perfectly pressed, not a strand of her blonde hair out of place. Branch manager, according to the gleaming nameplate beside her door. I'd almost forgotten she'd been promoted last month. Hey, Aubrey. I raised my hand in a small wave, just making a quick withdrawal. She crossed the floor toward me, heels clicking a staccato rhythm that commanded attention. Customers turned to watch, their eyes moving between us, noting the difference of her tailored suit against my department store cardigan, her salon-perfect hair against my simple ponytail. What brings you all the way to this branch? Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Isn't there somewhere closer to your apartment? The way she paused made my home sound like something temporary, something less than. Mrs. Kaplan needs her insulin. I'm just withdrawing some cash for her. Aubrey's expression tightened. Oh, another one of your charity cases. The teller glanced between us, recognition dawning in her eyes. Sisters, so different. One behind the counter, one before it. She's my neighbor, I said. Her social security check doesn't clear until Tuesday. Right. Aubrey's voice shifted, louder now, meant for the customers around us. Well, we don't really serve charity walk-ins anymore. Perhaps you could try the community branch over on Elmwood. The lobby fell silent. A woman in a cream-colored suit stared down at her phone. A man with silver hair adjusted his tie, suddenly fascinated by the brochure rack. I have an account here, I said, my voice steady despite the heat crawling up my neck. Of course you do. Her laugh tinkled like ice in a glass. That $500 savings account from college hardly seems worth the drive, does it? Christmas dinner 3 months ago flashed through my mind Dad's dismissive wave when I mentioned my cybersecurity contract with the medical research group. Computers? He'd scoffed, swirling his scotch. A glorified it job. When are you going to find real work with benefits? Mom had patted my hand. Tamsin just hasn't found her path yet, she'd said, as if I weren't sitting right there. Not everyone blooms early like Aubrey. I can handle this customer, Miss Blake, the teller said quietly. Aubrey's smile hardened. No need, Jessica. My sister was just leaving, weren't you, Tamsin? We're rather busy with our regular clients today. I looked around the nearly empty lobby, then back at my sister. Sure, Aubrey, I said, sliding my ID back into my wallet. I'll go somewhere my money is actually wanted. I turned away, spine straight, shoulders back, the way Grandpa Thomas had taught me. Chess posture, he'd called it. Never let them see you're hurting. The security guard, an older man with kind eyes, shelled the door for me. Don't let it get to you, miss, he whispered. Some people forget where they came from. Outside, the spring sunshine felt mockingly bright. I checked my watch, Grandpa's old Omega, the only thing of value I owned. Mrs. Kaplan would be waiting, counting on me. In my car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. Always the same story. The genius child who couldn't translate her skills into anything the Blake family respected. The disappointment of those who refused to join the family business. The oddball who preferred code to clients. I drove to Mrs. Kaplan's modest apartment building, rehearsing what I'd tell her. That I'd need to try another bank. That her insulin would have to wait a few more hours. What happened, dear? She asked the moment she saw my face, ushering me into her apartment that smelled of cinnamon and old books. Just a small delay, I said, accepting the cup of tea she pressed into my hands. Nothing for you to worry about. Family troubles again? Her eyes, magnified behind thick glasses, missed nothing. I nodded, not trusting my voice. They'll see your worth someday, she said, patting my hand. People like us, we're just invisible until we're not. Back in my apartment, I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, allowing myself exactly 10 seconds of hurt before straightening. My living room looked like what my family expected: modest furniture, faded curtains, the bookcases filled with computer manuals and paperbacks. Nothing like what lay behind them. I slid the middle shelf aside, revealing the hidden alcove where my workstation waited. 3 monitors glowed to life as I entered the 16-digit passcode. "Enough," I whispered to the empty room as the screens filled with financial data only 5 people in the world had access to. Absolutely enough. Later that day, behind the plain bookshelf in my apartment lay the truth my family had never bothered to discover. The 3 monitors bathed my face in blue light as I entered the final characters of my 16-digit passcode. The system hummed to life, displaying what the Blake family considered impossible: Sable Arc Holdings, my $2.9 billion empire built from shadows and silence. I sank into my ergonomic chair, the only luxury I'd allowed myself in this apartment. Theo's face appeared on the right screen, his familiar grin a welcome sight after the bank confrontation. "Tam, I was about to call. How'd the insulin run go?" I flexed my fingers, the muscles in my jaw tightening. "Aubrey happened." His expression darkened. "What did your sister do this time?" "Publicly suggested I take my charity case to the community branch on Elmwood." The words tasted bitter. "Called my account barely worth the drive." Theo whistled low. "In front of customers?" "The whole lobby. Security guard felt sorry for me." He shook his head, the silver at his temples catching the light. "That family of yours needs a reality check." "I think it's time they got one." I clicked through to the portfolio dashboard, bringing up Hathaway Federal's account records. $180 million in liquidity, all sitting in Aubrey's branch. "You're kidding." "Remember that Delaware LLC we registered when I was 24? I pulled up the original documents: $10,000 startup capital withdrawn from my graduation money. The acorn that grew a forest. The screen filled with the architectural diagram I'd designed: 4 nested corporate entities, each providing a different layer of protection. A financial fortress built by someone who understood both code and human nature. 4 separate layers of fiduciary protection. Theo leaned closer to his camera. "Nobody connects those dots unless you let them. Not even Jameson. My accountant thought he knew everything about my finances. He was wrong." I pulled up the onboarding paperwork from Hathaway Federal, dated 18 months ago. Aubrey's signature graced the bottom line: branch manager approval for their largest commercial account. She'd never bothered reading beyond the corporate name. "Are you sure about this, Tam?" Theo's voice softened. "Family is complicated." I thought of Mrs. Kaplan waiting for her insulin, of Christmas dinners spent defending my career choices, of Aubrey's smirk as I walked out of the bank. Family should know better. I opened the calendar application. "I'm scheduling a formal appointment for tomorrow. Sable Arc Trust Group. Bringing out the big guns." Time for Clause 47A. I referenced the withdrawal provision that would require branch manager oversight: Aubrey's personal attention. Theo whistled again. "She won't know what hit her." I closed the calendar and stood, crossing to my bedroom closet. Behind the department store cardigans hung a garment bag I rarely touched. I unzipped it slowly, revealing a Burberry suit in charcoal gray. Not navy, never navy, like Aubrey always wore. "Tamsin Blake, tech mogul." Theo's voice carried from the other room. "Has a nice ring to it." I ran my fingers over the fine wool. The suit was my armor, purchased the day Sable Arc crossed its first billion in valuation. I'd worn it exactly once. Grandpa Thomas's voice echoed in my memory. "Power isn't about the pieces you take, but the positions you control." He'd taught me chess every Sunday afternoon until his passing, his weathered hands moving pieces with deliberate care. "The queen doesn't announce her attack, Tammy. She simply arrives where she needs to be." The next morning, I drove to Springvale Cemetery before sunrise. The groundskeeper nodded as I passed, used to my monthly visits. Grandpa's grave stood beneath an old oak tree, simple and dignified like the man himself. I placed fresh flowers against the headstone, kneeling despite the damp grass. From my bag, I withdrew a small blue savings ledger, his gift to me on my 10th birthday. The leather cover had softened with age, the columns of careful figures faded but legible. "I think it's time, Grandpa." The rising sun warmed my back as I opened to the final page. There, in his precise handwriting, a note I'd read 100 times. For the one with the biggest heart, use this when they forget who you are. I traced the words with my fingertip. Grandpa had been the true financial genius of the family, though he'd never flaunted it. He'd recognized something in me that my parents and sister couldn't see or wouldn't. Back at my apartment later that day, I spread the documentation across my kitchen table. Clause 47A withdrawal forms, corporate identification, federal banking verifications. Everything in perfect order as it had been for years. A soft knock interrupted my preparations. Mrs. Kaplan stood in the hallway, holding a container of homemade cookies. "For your sweet tooth," she said, pressing them into my hands, "and to thank you for yesterday's help." Her kind eyes, magnified behind thick glasses, studied my face. "You look different today, dear. Something important is happening?" For a heartbeat, doubt flickered through me. Was I taking this too far? Then I remembered Aubrey's voice echoing across the marble lobby. "Hardly seems worth the drive, does it?" "Just a business meeting," I said, accepting the cookies. "Nothing special." Mrs. Kaplan patted my arm. "You wear that confidence well. It suits you better than hiding." After she left, I returned to my preparations. One final touch remained. From my dresser drawer, I lifted Grandpa's vintage Omega watch. The weight of it felt right against my wrist, a talisman of sorts. In the mirror, a different Tamsin Blake stared back at me. Not the invisible sister. Not the family disappointment. Someone they'd never bothered to see. Tomorrow, they would have no choice. Next day, the reflection staring back from the elevator's polished brass doesn't match the woman they've dismissed for years. Tamsin Blake, cybersecurity consultant, has vanished. In her place stands the executive director of Sable Arc Trust Group, clad in a charcoal suit tailored to perfection, not a thread out of alignment. My grandfather's Omega watch gleams against my wrist, the only familiar element remaining. "Fourth floor," announces the elevator with a dignified chime. The lobby of Hathaway Federal Bank stretches before me, more imposing than I remembered from 3 days ago. The same marble floor catches the morning light, but today it doesn't feel like enemy territory. My heels Italian leather that cost more than my first car click confidently across the polished surface. "Welcome to Hathaway Federal." The receptionist's smile freezes slightly as she registers my appearance. "How may I assist you today?" "I have an appointment." I slide a business card across the counter. Sable Arc Trust Group. Her eyes widened. She taps urgently at her keyboard, then stands so quickly her chair rolls backward. "Miss Blake, of course." One moment while I notify the executive team. The QR code on my business card triggers their system when scanned. On her screen, I glimpse the flashing purple border Tier 1 executive access reserved for clients controlling assets exceeding $100 million. A soft alarm sounds throughout the branch. Not the jarring security breach kind, but the discreet alert that signals to staff that someone consequential has arrived. Employees straighten papers. A man in a suit adjusts his tie. A woman smooths her skirt. Nobody looks directly at me, but everyone sees me. The compliance lock protocol initiates with beautiful precision. Computer screens freeze momentarily as the branch systems shift to heightened security parameters. Tellers pause mid-transaction, glancing nervously toward management offices. "Miss Blake," calls a silver-haired man in an impeccable suit, extending his hand. "Regional Director Phillips, we're honored to welcome Sable Arc Trust Group to our branch today." His grip is firm, respectful. Behind him, the branch manager's office door opens, and Aubrey emerges, irritation already blooming across her features. "What's happening?" she demands, straightening her navy blazer. "Why is the system locked in compliance mode?" Director Phillips turns, voice low but carrying in the hushed lobby. "We have a Tier 1 client, Aubrey, Sable Arc Trust Group." Aubrey approaches, a professional smile firmly in place, extending her hand before her eyes actually register who stands before her. "Welcome to Hathaway Federal." "I'm Branch Manager Blake. How may we?" The recognition hits her like a physical blow. Her hand freezes mid-extension. Color drains from her face so rapidly I worry momentarily about her fainting. "Tamsin?" Her voice barely reaches a whisper. "Miss Blake will be fine," I responded, voice steady. I believe we have an appointment to discuss Clause 47A of our holding agreement. Director Phillips glances between us, confusion evident. You're acquainted? Family, I answer simply, watching Aubrey struggle to regain her composure, though that won't be relevant to our business today. Phillips's eyebrows rise slightly, but his professional veneer remains intact. Of course, please this way to our executive conference room. Aubrey follows like a sleepwalker as we proceed through the branch. Employees watch our procession, curiosity evident in their sideways glances. The teller who tried to help me days ago, Jessica, I recall, stares openly, recognition flickering across her features. The conference room gleams with polished mahogany and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I take the head of the table without invitation, placing my slim leather portfolio precisely before me. Before we begin, I say, I'll need verification of account holdings and signatory authority. Phillips nods, tapping instructions into a tablet. A wall screen illuminates with account numbers and balances. $180 million spread across structured investment vehicles, all housed within this branch. Full verification confirmed, Phillips announces. Sable Arc Trust Group, primary signatory Tamsin E. Blake. Full discretionary authority granted January 2023. Aubrey sinks into the nearest chair, knees apparently unable to support her any longer. That's not possible, she whispers. Actually, I slide a document across the table. You personally signed the onboarding paperwork 18 months ago. Your signature, right there. She stares at her own handwriting, disbelief etched across her features. I sign hundreds of documents. How was I supposed to know? That your sister controlled significant assets? I finished for her. You never asked. The words land like stones in still water. The ripples of realization spread across her face, all those dismissive comments about my glorified IT job, the Christmas dinners where I was painted as the underachiever, the casual cruelty of 3 days ago. I'd like to initiate a withdrawal under Clause 47A. I continue, addressing Phillips while Aubrey struggles to breathe normally. The required 72-hour notification period was satisfied through electronic submission on Monday. Phillips nods, professional despite the tension crackling through the room. Of course, we've prepared the necessary documentation. How much will you be withdrawing today? The full amount. My voice remains level, matter of fact. We'll be transferring to First Central Trust effective immediately. Aubrey's face crumples. Tamsin, please. Her voice breaks. This will affect my quarterly metrics. My position review is next month. Phillips excuses himself discreetly, leaving us alone with the numbers still glowing on the wall screen. My mortgage, Aubrey continues, desperation rising. My bonus structure depends on asset retention. I didn't know it was you. You never bothered to find out. I opened my portfolio, revealing the document that started everything. Grandfather Thomas's Pennsylvania Legacy Trust, established 1998. Grandfather left this to you? Her voice sounds small, childlike. To the one who values knowledge over appearance, I quote from memory. The initial seed was modest, but I built Sable Arc from there. I met the control requirements at 30, gained full signatory authority at 32. Aubrey slides to her knees beside my chair, a position so unfamiliar I barely recognize my always perfect sister. Please, she whispers. I have a mortgage, a reputation. So did Mrs. Kaplan, I responded quietly, when she needed insulin money that day. The branch phones begin lighting up, first one line, then 3, then all of them blinking urgently. I check my watch, right on schedule. That would be Mother, I say, rising and gathering my portfolio. Eli has likely already called her. News travels fast when money moves. What do you want? Aubrey asks, still kneeling. What would make this go away? I look down at her, remembering every dismissal, every belittling comment, every Christmas dinner where my accomplishments vanished into the background of her conventional success. Nothing makes this go away, I answer truthfully. But dinner tomorrow might be a start. 6 o'clock, Rossetti's in Delaware County. Bring Mother and Eli. As I walk toward the door, Aubrey calls after me. I don't understand. Why now? Why like this? I pause, hand on the doorknob. Grandfather told me chess isn't about the pieces you take but the positions you control. I glance back at her. Consider this check, not checkmate. What happens next depends on tomorrow night. Outside, sunshine bathes the city in golden light. Theo waits beside a black sedan, questions written across his features. Well? He asks, opening the door. Phase 1 complete, I answer, sliding into the cool leather interior. The board is set. On my phone, a text from Mrs. Kaplan appears. Remember who you are, dear, not just what you can do. I tuck the phone away, remembering the thin portfolio waiting in my apartment, the original will, the forged amendment, the diverted scholarship funds. Tomorrow's dinner will require a different kind of power. But today, for the first time in years, I felt visible. Next day, Parisi's Italian stood like a sentinel on the corner of Maple and 3rd, the same red brick facade that had witnessed Blake family celebrations for 3 decades. I straightened my charcoal blazer before pushing through the heavy oak door, my grandfather's watch a comforting weight against my wrist. The hostess recognized me immediately. Miss Blake, your family's already seated in the private room. Of course they were. Nothing said damage control like privacy. Mother spotted me first, rising from her chair with outstretched arms. Tamsin, darling. Her voice carried the practiced enthusiasm of a shopping channel host. We were beginning to worry. I checked my watch. I'm 2 minutes early. Vivian Blake's smile flickered for just a heartbeat before regaining its brilliance. Her cream blouse probably cost more than Mrs. Kaplan's monthly rent. Well, you look absolutely wonderful. She air-kissed both my cheeks, her Chanel perfume hanging between us like a question. Eli stood next, extending his hand with that financial advisor firmness he'd practiced in business seminars. Good to see you, Tamsin. His teeth flashed white against his tanned face. That blazer looks expensive. Business must be good. Always fishing. Always assessing. Aubrey remained seated, her fingers tracing the rim of her water glass. The restaurant lights caught the massive diamond on her left hand. Hi, Tam. Her voice lacked its usual authority. She hadn't called me Tam since high school. I took the empty chair, nodding to the waiter who appeared with practiced timing. Sparkling water, please. So, Mother began once he departed. We thought a nice family dinner was long overdue. You've been so busy with your computer work. Cybersecurity, I corrected, unfolding my napkin. And yes, business has been excellent. Silence settled over the table like snow until Eli leaned forward. You know, if you're finally generating some real income, I could help you structure things properly. Tax advantages, investment strategies, the basics. I smiled. That's thoughtful. He nodded, mistaking politeness for interest. Most people in tech lack financial literacy. They make a little money and think they're set. Mother jumped in. Remember when Tamsin won that programming contest in high school? We always knew she had such potential. Strange how my potential had remained dormant in family conversations until now. The waiter returned with breadsticks and took our orders. Mother dominated the conversation through appetizers, recounting stories of my childhood achievements as if she'd been their most ardent supporter. And that science fair project in 8th grade? The judges were simply amazed. What she didn't mention, she'd refused to drive me to the competition because Aubrey had a tennis match the same day. I remained quiet, watching the performance unfold. Mother's excessive hand gestures, Eli's strategic name-dropping of clients, Aubrey's uncharacteristic silence. The small signals they exchanged when they thought I wasn't looking. Their Caesar salads arrived, followed by my caprese, the perfect timing for what came next. I reached into my bag and placed a thin portfolio beside my plate, its black leather cover unmarked except for a small embossed B in the corner. The conversation faltered as 3 pairs of eyes fixed on it. Before we continue this evening, I said, opening the portfolio with deliberate care, I thought we should clarify a few things. Mother's fork paused halfway to her mouth. What things, darling? I extracted the first document, sliding it toward the center of the table. This is Dad's original will, dated 14 months before his death. You'll notice on page 3, paragraph 6, the estate was to be divided equally between Aubrey and me. Eli's throat worked visibly. Ancient history, Tamsin. Legal documents get updated all the time. True. I placed a second document beside the first. Like this amendment, supposedly signed by Dad. Dated during his final week in the ICU when he couldn't hold a spoon, let alone a pen. Aubrey's face whitened beneath her perfect makeup. Then there's this. The third document joined the others. Bank records showing $400,000 withdrawn from the STEM Scholarship Fund and transferred to Orion Ventures. Your company, Eli. Mother set down her fork with a sharp clink. This is hardly an appropriate dinner conversation. I disagree. My voice remained calm, each word measured. This seems exactly the right setting to discuss family matters. Eli's businessman smile appeared, though it stopped well short of his eyes. Financial transactions get complicated. There are always explanations for these things. I'm sure there are. I took a sip of water. I'm not here to fight, just to clarify where I stand. When the waiter returned to check on our entrees, I requested the check for my portion. You're not staying for dessert? Mother's voice pitched higher. They have that chocolate tart you loved as a child. No thank you. I replaced the documents in my portfolio. I have what I need. As I stood, Eli's phone buzzed with incoming texts. He glanced down, his face tightening as he read. I left cash for my meal, nodded to the waiter, and walked toward the exit. Behind me, the whispered accusations had already begun. What did you do, Aubrey? Me? This is your fault. Both of you shut up before someone hears. Outside, the evening air carried the scent of coming rain. I walked to my car, each step lighter than the one before. For the first time in years, the weight of their expectations no longer pressed against my shoulders. The truth had done what I never could set me free. Days later, they couldn't reach me. Not anymore. My phone buzzed for the third time since breakfast. Vivian again. I watched the screen light up, then fade to black, her name disappearing like smoke. 47 missed calls since that dinner last week. 29 voicemails ranging from tearful pleas to thinly veiled threats. Tamsin, please, you're tearing this family apart, her latest message whimpered. We can explain everything if you'd just answer your phone. I deleted it without a second thought and continued typing the email to Salinger and Bechtel about the STEM Scholarship Fund restoration. My laptop screen cast a blue glow across my kitchen table, illuminating the stack of auditing documents I'd been reviewing since dawn. The buzzer to my apartment rang. The security camera feed showed Eli standing at the entrance, his silver Lexus idling by the curb, hazard lights blinking. Third time this week. I pressed the intercom. Building management. How can I help you? Eli's face twisted. Cut it out, Tamsin. I know you're up there. Sir, I'll need to ask you to leave or I'll call the police. This is ridiculous. We're family. His voice cracked. The Westbrook investors are pulling out. Your mother can't sleep. Aubrey. I released the intercom button and returned to my email. Through the window, I watched him pound the building door once before, slinking back to his car, shoulders hunched against the autumn wind. My phone lit up with a text from Theo. Bank VP called Aubrey in for routine review this morning. Regional management requested a full audit of branch operations. I smiled. The dominoes were falling exactly as planned. You reap what you sow, Grandpa Thomas used to say while tending his garden, calloused hands gently turning soil. The same hands that taught me chess, that showed me how to wait for the perfect moment to strike. The doorbell rang again that afternoon at my apartment, not the building buzzer me actual door. I checked the peephole to find Mrs. Kaplan holding a covered dish, her white hair carefully pinned back. I made that chicken casserole you like, she said when I opened the door. Her sharp eyes scanned my face. You look tired, dear. Just busy. I accepted the dish, warmth seeping through the oven mitts she'd wrapped around it. Those people been bothering you again? I saw that fancy car downstairs earlier. I guided her to the kitchen table, clearing space among the documents. Nothing I can't handle. I know that look. She patted my hand. My Harold had the same one when he was building his case against that manufacturing company that stole his patent. Determination with a side of righteous anger. Mrs. Kaplan didn't know the details, but she understood the shape of what was happening. Sometimes that was enough. After she left, a formal letter arrived by courier. Cream-colored envelope, embossed letterhead from Preston and Whitaker, my family's longtime attorneys. I opened it at my desk, beneath the framed photo of Grandpa Thomas standing beside his prize-winning tomatoes. Mental health concerns and fiduciary competence evaluation. The letter suggested deep concerns about my sudden erratic financial decisions and potential diminished capacity following years of employment instability. It proposed a family mediation session with their selected counselor, a cousin of Eli's from Connecticut. I laughed out loud, the sound strange in my quiet apartment. My response took exactly 12 minutes to draft. A single page from Salinger and Bechtel LLP referencing the 3 secure servers containing documented evidence of will tampering, embezzlement from the scholarship fund, and 6 other financial improprieties I'd uncovered. The closing paragraph offered 2 paths: complete surrender to my terms or public disclosure of all documents to the appropriate authorities. I hand-delivered it to Preston and Whitaker's reception desk the next morning. 2 days later, Theo forwarded me an email thread. The family had called an emergency meeting without me. Subject line: urgent. Blake family financial restructuring. Aubrey had apparently broken down completely, admitting to additional financial maneuvers I hadn't even discovered yet. Vivian's desperate suggestion to contest the legacy trust had been shot down by their own attorneys. "What now?" Theo asked when he stopped by that evening. He stood by my window watching night settle over the city. "You've got them cornered." I closed my laptop and rolled my grandfather's watch between my fingers, feeling its familiar weight. Now we implement the terms. No contact for 6 months, required family therapy with an independent counselor, full restoration of the scholarship fund under new management. They'll hate it. They already do. I slipped the watch onto my wrist, but they'll comply. And after 6 months? I thought about Christmas dinners where my voice was talked over, birthdays where my gifts were set aside unopened, decades of dismissal that had hardened into habit. "That depends on them," I said, tightening the watch band. "Some storms change the landscape forever." Outside, the autumn wind pressed against my windows, invisible but undeniable, just like the power I now wielded unseen until it moved things. 6 months later, the corner booth at Malone's Diner wrapped around me like an old friend. Morning sunlight spilled through windows that hadn't been updated since Reagan was president, catching dust motes that danced in the air. I ran my fingers over the worn leather of Grandpa Thomas's blue savings ledger, its spine cracked from decades of careful entries. 6 months could change everything and nothing at all. The diner's clock ticked above the counter, marking time in the same steady rhythm as the world outside continued turning. "More coffee, hon?" Betsy, who'd been serving here since I was tall enough to see over the counter, held the pot aloft. "Please." I closed the ledger as she topped off my cup, steam rising between us. When she moved on to the next table, I reopened the book to the final page where Grandpa's handwriting slanted across the paper in fading blue ink. "For the one with the biggest heart, use this when they forget who you are." I understood now what he'd meant. Not revenge, not punishment, but restoration. The power he'd entrusted wasn't for breaking things, but for setting them right. Vivian, me mother, had sent a handwritten letter last week. 3 pages, no excuses, just recognition of years spent devaluing what she couldn't understand. The paper bore small water stains. She was trying in her way. Aubrey had transferred to Pittsburgh, starting fresh where her name didn't carry the weight of what had happened. The regional manager had called it a lateral move, but we both knew better. Eli had downsized his office space. 2 of his partners had quietly withdrawn after reviewing certain financial disclosures that had found their way to them. He'd stopped calling altogether after the 3rd month. I sipped my coffee, watching a young mother at the counter struggling to keep her toddler entertained while waiting for their order. Without fanfare, Betsy slipped the child a handful of crayons and a paper placemat. Small kindnesses, freely given. Like the monthly checks that now went to Mrs. Kaplan and 7 others in her building, ensuring medications were never late again. Like the scholarship fund, restored and expanded, now helping 15 students instead of 10. The bell above the door chimed. Mrs. Kaplan herself shuffled in, her walking steadier than 6 months ago. The insulin was working properly now that she took it on schedule. "There you are," she beamed, making her way to my booth. "I thought I might find you here." "Just finishing up." I slid the ledger into my bag as she settled across from me. Her glasses caught the light as she studied my face. You look different, she decided, nodding once. Peaceful. Before I could answer, a young man in a tailored suit stopped at our table, recognition dawning in his eyes. Miss Blake? Tamsin Blake? He straightened his tie. I'm sorry to interrupt, but are you the founder of Sable Arc? Mrs. Kaplan glanced between us, curious. I am. No denial, no false modesty. I just joined First Capital's investment division. Your infrastructure design is revolutionary. He shook his head in admiration. They study your model in business school now. I offered a small smile. I built something they never saw coming. He nodded respectfully before continuing to his table. Mrs. Kaplan raised her eyebrows. There's more to you than meets the eye, isn't there, dear? I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Isn't there to all of us?